How do you practice improvisation? Is it even possible to practice improvisation? And you might think that there's a very simple answer to that question, but lots of people say to me, I wish that I could improvise, I wish I could do what you do, but I don't have the gift for it. And I think that speaks to a real common misconception about improvisation, as if you've got to have a gift or a special strand of DNA or something. But of course, that's not the way it works. Improvisation is a skill, like any other, like riding a bike or baking a perfect sourdough loaf. It's a skill that you can learn with time and application and small incremental steps. So what are those small incremental steps? We can take some ideas from jazz, and we can look at the way that people used to learn to improvise in the past to give us some strategies, some ways of getting better, some ways of integrating improvisation into our practice. So you're going to need your instrument, so pause the video now and go and get it. Good? You're back? You've got it? Fantastic. And we're going to need a chord sequence. So here's a fantastic chord sequence. This is the chord progression from Bach's Goldberg variations from the aria. You may know that he wrote a set of 30 variations on this chord sequence, and it sounds like this. 3 and. So the first thing that we're going to do is take those chord changes and put them on our instrument. And very simply, we're just going to run up and down the arpeggios of each of the chord changes out of time, out of tempo. So the first one, G major. Play along with me. Grab your instrument and play along with me. D major on F sharp. The third chord, E minor 6. D major. Etc., etc. You get the idea. So pause the video now and play the changes. Great. How did that go? Hopefully that went fantastic. There's a couple of ways that we can develop this idea, and that's to play each chord in every inversion. So I'm going to start with root position. Like that, and play every inversion on the way up and on the way down. That gets a little tricky when it comes to the chords that have got 4 notes in. Quite beautiful as well. We could do that, and we can also skip a note and come back to a note. And what I mean by that is this. Like that. So it's a really good workout, and we're sort of priming our ear with the chordal information, and we're also getting it on our instrument, getting familiar with how it feels and how it sounds. So pause the video again and have a go with that, this time with inversions and with skipping a note and coming back. Great, hopefully that worked really well. So now let's put that in tempo. I'm going to play just 1 note per chord change this time. And the game is to make your chord tone line as sticky as possible. Remember, notes are lazy. So we're not trying to jump around. We're just going to play a chord tone line that hopefully moves in step as much as possible. And I'm going to give you one more rule, and that rule is, as far as we can, we want to avoid the tonic
of each chord. That's the most boring note. The continuo player or the bass player is playing that note. We want to avoid that. We want to try and stick to the third or the fifth or perhaps the seventh or the sixth if it happens to be in that chord. So here we go. We're going to play through the chord sequence just one note at a time. Great, okay, so we're going to do the same exercise. This time, we're going to play two notes, so minims, two beat notes per bar. And again, we're just sticking to chord tones. Now, I know I said avoid the tonic, and I started with a big tonic, but occasionally you'll find your way through the changes. You might find that you hit the tonic. That's not the end of the world. So just chord changes and 2 notes per bar. Here it comes. Okay, so we're starting to get a little bit more of a melody going here. So you guessed it, the next thing that we're going to do is play 4 notes per bar. 4 crotchet beats, 4 quarter notes, 4 quarter notes. And again, we are just sticking to chord tones, but we're going to try and make it as melodic as possible, see if we can find a lovely snaky way through the changes. Here it comes. Yeah, lovely stuff, lovely stuff. So the next stage is a little bit more complicated, and it's probably best if I demonstrate first and then I leave a whole pass of the chord sequence for you to have a go. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to play quavers, and this time I'm allowed scales and stepwise movement to try and connect those chord tones which happen on the strong beats of the bar, on beats 1, 2, 3 and 4. And this takes a little bit of time to get used to. I'll see if I can demonstrate what I mean. It sounds like this. There we go. Well, actually, I took a couple of little wrong turns in that, but it's really fun. So have a go now. We're going to play the chord sequence through one more time, and this time you're going to try and connect those 4 beats of the bar with some connective tissue, with some connective scalic material, some stepwise motion. Here it comes, just you this time.
Here's another wonderful chord sequence, La Folia, used throughout history by many composers, including Corelli and Handel.
Great, so we're going to do the same exercise that we did before. We're just going to play a guide tone, a chord tone line through the chord changes, and we're just going to play the third or the fifth of the chord, or if it's got a seventh in it. In fact, none of these chords have got sevenths in it, so it's just going to be the third or the fifth, and we're going to treat the notes as being sticky. We're going to see if we can find a lovely snaky line through the chord changes. And notice that actually in this progression, there are sometimes more than one chord change per bar. So you're going to have to be a little bit on the ball in bars 5 and 6 and 7. Or just 6 and 7, isn't it? Yeah. Here we go. Yeah, and at any point in this video, of course, you can always just rewind and have another little go at that. This time, we're going to do the same exercise, but we're going to embellish the guide tone line. And there's a few different ways that we can do this. We can approach the note from above. We can approach the note from below. Or, of course, we can do any of our lovely Baroque or classical ornamentation. Or we can enclose the note like that as well. So here we go. Same chord progression, same concept, a through line, but this time embellishing that guide tone line and perhaps leaving a little rest now and again as well. Here it comes. Play along with me. Great, and you can rewind and have another go at that. This time we're going to do the same idea, but we're going to be a little bit more elaborate with our embellishments. Now, here at Trinity, we're so lucky with all the incredible architecture that we have. And if you've been over the road to the Painted Chapel built in 1725, then you would have seen loads of ornamentation, right? Loads of filigree at the top of the columns. So let's think about the columns as being the chords. And what we're going to do is just decorate them. We're going to join up those chords with lots of filigree, lots of decoration, lots of highly ornamented little detail. And really, when we're doing this kind of exercise, scales and arpeggios are our friends. And we've already done lots of exercises to learn the chord changes. So I think perhaps the best idea is if I play one time through, you can see what I mean, and then I'll leave it blank and you can have a go as well. So this is the same exercise, same chord progression, but this time a more elaborate embellishment. Here we go. There we go. I think I actually took a few little wrong turns, but that's part of the process, actually, is making some mistakes, because very often the mistakes are the most interesting part. You learn a lot of lessons from your mistakes in an improvisatory context. Great. So now your turn. That same idea once through the chord changes. Here you go. Great. So I can also use the same idea when treating the melody. Now you'll notice that the melody of La Folia has loads of gaps in it. Probably one of the reasons that composers love to use it as a theme. So I'm going to use those gaps and I'm going to fill them with my lovely embellishment, with my lovely filigree, with my lovely scalic runs and chordal information, broken arpeggios, inversions of the chords, and play a note, skip a note in the same way that we did when we looked at the Goldberg. Again, I'll do a version and then I'll ask you to copy. So here's my version. That sort of thing. Your go.
So there's some strategies for how to practice improvisation. Now, hopefully when it comes to performing in an assessment or a performance, you've got some ideas for how you might be able to prepare for those assessments. Why should we learn to improvise? And that's a totally valid question about anything that we learn at music college. Why should we be doing this? And there's usually two types of answers for that kind of question. The first type of answer is the hard outcomes. What's the direct utility of learning this lesson? Well, I probably shouldn't have to sell it to you too hard. Learning to improvise is a wonderful, useful skill. At some point in your career, I guarantee someone is going to say, I've got this song, can you improvise and put a melody over the top of it? Don't be one of those musicians that says, oh, I only really play from music. Be one of those musicians that says, yeah, absolutely, I'm prepared to give that a go. And that gets you into some really wonderfully interesting collaborative relationships with other musicians. And the other type of answer is the soft outcome answer. And in other words, what skills might we be using or learning by stealth when we're improvising? Well, we've just spent 20 minutes engaging quite deeply with the harmony of two progressions. And it's one thing to understand on paper that a 1C5-1 progression is just, a second inversion chord followed by the dominant. But it's quite another to be able to improvise a line that spells out that harmony. Then you've got to know the gravity of that chord change. You've got to know the direction and the flow of the music. And if you can improvise over a set of chord changes, You've really demonstrated that you've understood those chord changes on a deep and visceral and quite profound level. So, I hope you've enjoyed learning about some strategies for how to practice improvisation. I'll see you in the next video.